talk about some issues involving the COVID-19 pandemic. Some strange things going on with COVID-19. Interesting things. And hopefully we'll get a chance to
Okay,
go over
Mr.
some.
Shelton, we are live. Hello, welcome to Brown Sugar Amplified. And I have on with us today journalist and activist Malik Shelton. We're going to be speaking
Yeah,
about double standards when it comes to COVID-19. And y'all don't want to hear me speak. Y'all know me, I'm Crystal Rain. But who you do want to hear is Mr. Shelton. And so I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us about the work he's been doing in the community. Mr.
yes,
Shelton?
thank you. Yes, thank you, Crystal. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your listeners for tuning in. I hope that we all get something out of this. I am a local journalist who was raised in Detroit from a very early age, at the age of 3, although I was born in Chicago. I'm a freelance journalist. I've never been on the staff of any publication, and I like it because it gives me the independence to be able to write what I want and have some leeway in what I write about. Whereas if you're on the staff, a lot of times you're under a lot of pressure from the editors and publishers to kind of toe the line that they want you to toe. I've been very fortunate, though, that right now I'm writing for a local newspaper that's based in River Rouge, Michigan. It's called The Telegram. It's a Black-owned publication, Black-owned weekly newspaper, owned by a woman named Gina Stewart. But the paper itself has been in existence since the 1940s.
Okay.
And I've been writing for that paper for about 2 years and have written some insightful, I think, and revealing articles about a number of things. I usually write on topics dealing with social, economic issues, social justice issues, if you will. But just about anything that I think that people are interested in, and that I'm also interested in, I will put my pen to it.
Awesome.
And so I'm also a family man. I think that's one of perhaps my greatest achievement. I have 3 children, wife and 3 children, and I currently live on the east side of Detroit.
Awesome. Now, I know you've been doing some work, is you and a group of young men, and you've really been out in the community and doing lives about telling people about what's going on with their tax dollars, making them aware of their rights, making residents who are near, I'm assuming some of the new plants, aware of their rights. What is that?
Yeah, that occurred. I've been working with a young man, a young brother. His name is Ramon Jackson. We call him the People's Advocate.
Mm-hmm.
I call him the Advocate or the Advocate. He's also a native Detroiter.
Okay.
And he founded an organization called Advocates for Social Change,
Mm-hmm.
or Advocates for Social Change. And I became familiar with him. I saw some of his videos on Facebook where he was deconstructing Detroit's budget.
Okay.
I had never come across a breakdown like that. In fact, I had kind of lost interest with local politics, and I was more focusing on world events or national events, those types of topics, until I began to watch this young man watch his videos and listen to how he deconstructed and explained how the tax dollars in the general fund were being used in the city of Detroit, and also how federal grant money coming from Washington, which is also our money, that's something else that's important. When we say government money, we have to really qualify that, because government money is the people's money.
That's
The
true.
money that the government has or should be working with is the people's tax dollars.
Okay.
And so all that money, whether it's on the federal level, state level, or local level, when it's dealing with the government, it's also dealing with people's tax dollars. So,
okay.
So this is how I got to answer your question. This is how I began to become involved with Ramon Jackson, local politics, and also advocates fighting for social change. That's a huge topic. In fact, I would highly recommend or suggest that you have Ramon Jackson on, because he has a lot of very interesting insights into the workings of not only what's going on in the city of Detroit, but in all urban centers, large cities across the United States of America, because statistics show, the stats show, that approximately 60% of Black Americans live in about 10 cities.
Okay.
And so this is something that we've been studying. This is something that Ramon has, in fact, he's written what he called a Black America report. Very insightful. He explains in detail that we have money in these cities. Say, for instance, in the city of Detroit, they lead us to believe that Detroit is impoverished. Okay, Detroit is impoverished, but Detroit is not impoverished because it doesn't have any money. Detroit is impoverished because the money is being misappropriated.
Of course, yes.
The money is coming in. For example, Detroit in the general fund has approximately gets approximately has available to it annually approximately 1.2 or 1.3 billion dollars. That's with the B, of course. Out of $1.3 billion, the money that is distributed or allocated back out, the majority of it goes to police, fire, and emergency services. That's about 55% of the budget. Guess how much goes to communities and neighborhoods out of that 1.2 billion? 2%.
Wow.
2% goes back. And what's really egregious about it is that this is not Mayor Duggan's money. This is not the Detroit City Council's money. The majority of that $1.2 billion comes from residents of the city of Detroit's tax dollars in the form of sales tax, utility tax, income tax, and other taxes, licensing tax, and so forth. And that's how I got involved with him, because he really kind of lit a fire under me and got me back interested in what's going on in local government and how it's really an outrage that a city like Detroit, which is approximately 80% African American, is treated so disrespectfully. And one of the things that we need to do, Crystal, and the listeners, we have to vote. You know, one of the reasons why we get treated so disrespectfully is because we're very naive with the local political process, and we don't utilize the power of our votes. And they know it. For example, the mayor, Duggan, he was elected with only about 60,000 votes out of a city that's, at least 650,000 residents. At least 650,000 residents live in Detroit. And Mayor Duggan was elected to the office of mayor. Mike Duggan was elected to the office of mayor with only 60,000 votes. Another example, Scott Benson, who's the councilman for District 3, which is the district I live in, right? He won his council seat with only about 6,000 votes. You have some that won council seats with like less than 6,000, 5,500 votes. Out of a city or out of a district where you have, over 100,000 people, and the city itself has over 600,000 people. And so this is what's going on, because, sad to say, many residents of the city of Detroit don't understand the importance of leveraging their voting power.
Mm.
And so we're still doing a lot of things, Crystal, but I don't want to delve into it right now because it'll take up the whole half an hour or so.
It was no problem. But I wanted to know, like, has some of your movement shifted? I know you guys are really about where that money is going and making sure that is going to the appropriate places and, you know, people in the city for their needs. Now, has any of the movement shifted? Has that been affected by COVID-19? Have you guys, you know, started looking at other things in regards to what's going on? Because they keep saying that, you know, our numbers are so disproportionate in regards to, you know, in the African American community, and looking at, you know, possible reasons why. Like, everyone just says that and just hear them throwing out, you know, black or the numbers or more Black people are dying. But usually, like you said, there could be reasons for that beyond just getting sick just from being out and about.
Well, the COVID-19 and the emergency orders that were issued by Governor Whitmer had a great impact, of course, on our movement, just like it had a actual impact on everyone. And what it did with us was it prevented us, Ramon Jackson, myself, and other members of the AFSC, from going down and engaging the Duggan administration, which is the executive branch of the city of Detroit, as well as the legislative branch, which is the Detroit City Council. Because we were going down and we were, you know, looking into the documents. We were exposing what they were doing in the meetings at the Detroit City Council. We were meeting with, we never met with Duggan, although we did question him several times at community meetings. But we met with some of his department heads, like Art Jam. We met with him. I used Freedom of Information Act to get many documents to show that proved how millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, in fact, was being misappropriated. Brother Ramon Jackson spearheaded the campaign and also the exposing. He spearheaded the exposing Mayor Duggan's egregious and unlawful illegal behavior with municipal bonds. This is something that we talk about. When we get to talk about how these municipal bonds were issued without the approval of the voters of the residents, which it has to, you know, unlimited tax general obligation bonds cannot be issued unless the voters vote on it, the residents of the city. And we didn't get a chance to vote on it. And so this is one of the big things. And I mean, we have over $1 billion in municipal bonds out, and just the payment on the bonded debt for the city of Detroit uses up or takes up 15% of the general fund budget goes to paying back loans, bonds. And, you know, we went to the Detroit City Council, we brought this up, and they looked at us like, you know, like deers caught in the headlights. They didn't have one word to say. Usually, if you say something to the Detroit City Council, one of them is going to call you back up to the microphone, something that they don't like, right?
Of course.
Try to check you about it, or try to make it seem like you know what you're talking about. Whenever we would go up here and get to talk about these finances and get to talk about these bonds, especially, yeah, like they couldn't wait to get us away from the microphone. But anyway, COVID-19. Yes, COVID-19 has affected us because it puts us in a position where we can't engage the government because the government is shut down. The only they have virtual meetings. But this is the thing, and this is important. Although they're telling the people, go in the house, shelter in place, stay 6 feet apart. The government offices are closed for business right now. We're not having any meetings. We're not allowing the public in. But while they're telling us these things, you can best believe that the government is still issuing contracts. It's still, giving out funds. It's still in the business of government. It's just doing it without the input of the people because of COVID-19.
Yes, because I know like the courthouses are only seeing case by case. If it wasn't an emergency, it wasn't going to be seen, or they're doing video meetings. Everything's by video, and then yes. But it's based case by case. They're going to look at it if they feel like you may think it's the most important thing in the world, or at least to you at that moment. But if they don't feel that it's important, it's going to be put on the back burner. And I just want to know, what have you noticed since, COVID-19 and the lockdown started? Like, there were things that were already prevalent in New York City, but just be brought back up. Like, they had stopped the whole stop, frisk, and search just random. Like, you just walking down the street and they felt like stopping you. They'd stop you and frisk you. And of course, they were mainly stopping minority young men. And now, since they're not doing that, if you try to go into a store without a mask, I don't think we've had that issue as far as from police, because most people at least have on a mask, or they've, even if they've been upset based on leaving, they've left, even though we have had the incidents where the young man was shot, and then the other instance where the older man wiped his snot on the young lady who was working in a store by herself. And right now your bodily fluids are, you may be considered dangerous. That's a dangerous thing to do. That's just nasty in the first place. But just those type of things we have had so far, but nothing like where the police brutality, as far as I know, I'm not, that's why I kind of want to ask you, have you noticed anything like that? Like, it's a little different. Like, we had talked yesterday about the basketball courts being taken down. And yes, the parks by me is all taped up, but I haven't driven by Oak Park basketball courts. I don't think they've been taken down. You know what I'm saying? It's things like that. Like, why would you take down the basketball courts instead of just roping them off, saying, hey, you can't play right now. Come back when this is over. So we've seen the police brutality like in New York. We've seen the things with Arbery. That's what I want to go ahead and put that out to you.
Well, let me touch upon that, and there are many facets or aspects to your question, and thank you for the question. It needs to be asked and answered and thought about. When you have, let me start here. I haven't really noticed anything personally because I haven't been going out a whole lot. But there's a ton of studies and data that shows that when you isolate people, when you isolate them and tell them, okay, we don't want you going outside, we want you to stay in the house, especially when you are isolating older people, senior citizens, and especially when you're saying that grandma and grandpa and great-grandma and great-grandpa, you can't visit great-grandma and great-grandpa, grandma and grandpa, or you have them in these convalescent homes or nursing homes, and they're sickly, but they're being told, no, you can't see your loved ones. And even some of these nursing homes, they don't even let them come out their rooms, Chris.
Oh, wow. They can't come out their room. Now, that I didn't hear.
Oh, yes. Now, that I know.
Wow.
You stay in the room. And so now there are studies that show that isolation can affect everyone in a very negative way. And also, isolation causes depression. Depression causes a lower immune system, a compromised immune system, which can also cause infections. Now, let's touch upon something else here. Air pollution. I see people walking with masks. I grew up in Southwest Detroit, near the Marathon Ashland Petroleum Refinery. You have these huge stacks that are spewing out all kinds of pollution 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have particulates. They call it PMs, particulate matter. PMs. A PM is a particle which is a tenth of the width of a human hair. And when it's that small, it can go into your lungs and do damage. Mm. There's also all other kinds of pollutants, benzene, and many others that cause respiratory disease and heart disease, cardiovascular disease. I've seen people playing right in the shadow of the plant for years. No one had a mask on. Mm. People are dying. There was an article written about a month before the COVID-19 pandemic hit the area, where a very respectable journalist said in the Metro Times, according to a study that he put in his article, anywhere from 300 to 600 people die in the city of Detroit every year. And this has been going on for decades. And that's to be attributed to or traced to air pollution. Then we hear the experts saying that if you have a compromised immune system, if you have weak lungs, if you already have diseased lungs, if you already have a diseased heart, if you already have cardiopulmonary diseases like asthma, acute or chronic bronchitis, and so forth and so on, COPD, which is another lung disease, mm-hmm. are more likely to die if you do become infected by COVID-19 viruses. So, if all of the experts are saying that, Crystal and our listeners, why is it that Governor Whitmer is closing down all these things, closing down small businesses, closing down health spas, closing down gyms, closing down this, closing down the mom and pop store, closing, you know what I'm saying? But then you got Marathon Aspen Refinery, which is the biggest, most dangerous polluter in the whole state of Michigan, going full blast. Now, people might say, well, Malik, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. And see, this is another thing I don't like, Crystal. It's gotten to the point that here in the United States of America, they don't even want you to ask certain questions no more.
Oh, no.
You know, if you ask a question, you say, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. You know, I'm asking a question. I have a right to ask questions, and I have a right to get answers. Not only ask the question, to get some answers. Mm. So I'm asking you on your show. Maybe someone can call in or chime in. Why is it that Whitmer closed down all these businesses? She left the liquor stores open, and she left the Marathon Aspen Refinery open. That's just one example. She also left a lot of these other pollution centers open in the city of Detroit. And I think, and there's evidence to back it up, that by all of this pollution going on in the city of Detroit and in some of these large urban cities, that has caused the influx of deaths in these areas, specifically and particularly here in the city of Detroit. People wanted to know, say, why so many people die in Detroit, you know, of COVID-19? Mm-hmm. But experts already said that if you live in a polluted area, you're more likely to die with COVID-19. They say, I'm just repeating what they said. So yes, that's one of the things.
Okay.
The pollution, the shelter in place also is causing. They're not really reporting these numbers. They're starting to report a little bit of it now, but right from the beginning, Ramon Jackson and myself, we were saying, you know, there's more to the COVID-19 thing than just the virus itself. There's a lot of different ramifications. There's a lot of different things that's going to impact people. You know, let me give you another example. Well, you know, a lot of people have lost their jobs, Crystal.
Oh, yes. We were talking about that yesterday. And we'll get to that in a minute, but go ahead.
If you are someone who is responsible, if you got dependents, you got children, or you got elderly people that are dependent upon your livelihood, and you lose your job, I mean, it deals with yourself. It damages your self-esteem. It makes you get stressed out. And so, there's stats that are in studies that have come out that are predicting. They don't have the exact numbers yet, or even ballpark numbers, but they're predicting based upon what they know about depression. But you've had quite a few people that have committed suicide because they've lost their job. Here's a rise in some areas, a very substantial, significant rise in spousal abuse right now, and also in child abuse.
Yes. Now, those are things that we know are happening more, the child abuse and you hear more about the domestic violence, because if the child's at home and not going to school and relatives aren't coming over, who's going to know? Is the child going to call CPS?
And so, touching upon an element of your question that you were mentioning, yes, when you're poor, and especially when you're poor and black, and especially when you're poor and black and African American, coming into contact with the police for any reason, I'm gonna say it again, for any reason, can result in a death sentence for. Because all that cop got to do was say, I thought he was reaching for something, right? I thought he was reaching for something. Or I thought she was doing something. I thought she had something in her hand. And that's why I was afraid for my life. That's all they have to say. And so why am I bringing it up?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to always have people that go outside. Now, we as black folk, we want to denigrate and verbally attack, and sometimes even physically attack people that we see out on the streets. But some of these people that are out on the streets, they have no choice but to be out on the street. Some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, when they go out on the street, it gives, when you have an order, a shelter-in-place order like the Governor Whitmer, in the case of Michigan, issue, and you find black folks out on the street, and they're going to target black folks more than anybody, right? It sets up a stage, or it sets up a situation where people can die because they come into contact with the police, or they can be brutalized because they come into contact with the police.
Yes. Now, speaking on that, because the reason why I brought that up is because, like I said, we haven't had like I said, we haven't had any reports of that so far, which I am thankful about. But when you see the contrast in pictures in certain areas where they're passing out the mask in the parks, and then condemning all the others, and it's like, why not just pass out a mask to everybody? So the man, I don't know if he was hungry, whatnot. Because I saw a couple or two people who were brutally arrested. It was terrible. And then they arrested another guy who was just on the sidewalk. I think he was trying to actually walk past, and then the cop started walking towards him, and he was like, no, I'm backing up, I'm good. No, I'm just, I'm not sure if he was, wherever he had to go was just in their vicinity, so he was waiting. Then he was arrested, and the man kept his knee on his neck, and it was an ethnic cop, on his neck for like, I don't know, way longer than I thought, because he was down on the ground not moving. I was like, you just gonna sit on him like that? It was just like something to see, and it was like, over what? You're passing out the mask to the white people in the park, pass out the mask to the person so he can go into the store. It's just things like that, those double standards.
Let me say this. This is what I was concerned with almost from the very beginning. When Governor Whitmer issued the shelter-in-place orders, and all of the other orders, the travel bans, people couldn't go see their loved ones. Okay. First thing I asked was, what gives her the authority to do that? So I looked up and I found out she does have authority to issue emergency emergency orders. It comes from a Michigan law that was passed in 1946, I think it was, in the mid-40s, 1940s, and also another law, state law, that was passed in the 1970s. And I read the laws. They're pretty extensive.
Mm.
They're not going to tell you this on your local news station, and they're not going to tell you this on your national news stations.
Okay.
Governor Whitmer actually under these laws, and I've read them. In the case of a pandemic, if the doctors who are at the head of these organizations like the CDC and the World Health Organization and some of the other ones, especially, if they declare a pandemic or it's a virus, a deadly virus out here, the governors, specifically the governor of the state of Michigan, because I read that particular law in the state of Michigan, she not only has the authority to order people in their homes. Now listen to this. She can say, you know what, I think those group of people over there have been exposed to the virus.
Mm.
I want the state police to go and round all of them up, the whole block, right?
Oh, yes. And we saw that power in Illinois, in Chicago.
And put them in quarantine.
That's what she did.
Whether they want to go or not. They have that authority. So this is why usually she has authority to issue an emergency order. Well, it's not usually. She does have the authority to issue an emergency that lasts for 27 days duration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then after 27 days has elapsed, according to the law, she has to go to the state legislature to extend it. But she's been trying to use some legal razzle dazzle to say, hey, I don't need to go through that.
Okay.
I can extend it again, and I can extend it again. So now her authority to do that is being challenged in state courts.
So that's where the part where people are confused. It's not that they're, challenging her. They're just challenging keeping her extending it. They're like, yeah, she does have the right. And they did rule her that she could. And then they also gave, when the courts, they gave her permission to do that. That's how that part went. So now I want to go, before our time is almost over, I want to go to, to talk about, you brought this up about some double standards. I'm going to hit on the main ones that we were talking with, the medical ones. Because you brought up a good book, and you brought up something that I don't think a lot of people think about or realize, or depending on how many documentaries you've watched or just how much you know about Black people's history when it comes to the medical profession. And like they're saying, oh, it's bringing out some double standards. No, those double standards are already there. They've already been brought out. There isn't a good history. And you brought out a medical apartheid, a book that was written by, you said, what's her name, Harriet Anderson? I looked it up, and I actually downloaded it. I haven't read it yet. I have the audio. Harriet, say again?
Her name is Washington.
Harriet Washington.
And she was a researcher at Harvard Medical School. And her position there enabled her to get a lot of information from different medical centers and hospitals and stuff, in their records. Because what she would do, she would call up Crystal, like say for instance, Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. She would call them up. And she said, this is Mr. Washington, I'm calling from, she'd call him while she was at work. She said, I'm calling from Harvard Medical. And can you put up these records for me? And they would give them to her. Since she had that position. And she wrote a book called Medical Apartheid, Experimentation on Black Americans from Slavery, Chattel Slavery, till the Present. And it was published in 2006. And basically what she did, she illustrated medical experimentation on Black people and how they were forced. Like doing chattel slavery, they would go around and they would get Black people who had gotten old and could no longer work. These so-called doctors and researchers would go to the plantation or and buy them. And then they would take them back to these hospitals and do experiments on them. And they would not give them any. Some of them were done with before they had painkillers.
Wow.
And you know, so they would hold them down, and they would do surgery on them, use them as guinea pigs. But anyway, to bring it up to the present, because this would take a long time to even delve into.
Yes, that's a whole nother topic. That could be a whole show. That's a whole nother topic.
But we have to tie it into what's going on today, because when we get so hysterical, like COVID-19, people are dying. And so the people in the hospital are saying they died of COVID-19. Here's another one. What's the cause of death? COVID-19. Now, this is something a lot of people don't know. If they think, and they don't have to test you to admit you into these hospitals to treat you like you have COVID-19. The doctor has the leeway to assume, based upon your symptoms, the doctor can say, well, I think that, I've examined him, I've listened to the symptoms, I think he's got COVID-19. Put him on the ventilator. Now, before they can put you on the ventilator, they do what they call intubation. A lot of people don't know this. Guess what they give you a lot of times during the intubation period?
I don't know.
Guess what drug they give? Fentanyl.
Fentanyl, okay.
That's the drug that's been all in the news, killing people, right? People overdosing on what? Fentanyl.
Yeah.
It's a synthetic heroin. It's synthetic heroin. It's at least 50 times stronger than street heroin. 50 times, 50. This is one of the drugs that they can give you before they do the intubation process, where they stick the tubes down the person's throat into their lungs, and then they connect the tube to the ventilator. But in that process, they give them fentanyl. Then they're telling you, oh, another one died. He was on the ventilator and he died. There was an emergency room doctor in New York. He resigned his position, he said, because they're killing people on the ventilators.
Because they're maybe giving them too much fentanyl, thinking, misdosing. People are tired,
Or they too much air in their lungs, or you got elderly people, right, that already come in there with underlying conditions and they're weak. And the doctors and nurses are running around there nervous.
Tired.
They say to the hospital, they're tired, they're irritable, they haven't got enough rest, they're scared because they think they might catch COVID-19, or they don't know if they've got it. And there's another element. Let's not fool ourselves, people, that racists are only running around with swastikas and Ku Klux Klan outfits on, or skinheads, and calling us, the N-word. Racists have been hired into, or they occupy all professions, and they're definitely in the medical field. They are definitely in the medical field. So just like you got people that hate black people and want to kill black people that have police uniforms on, you also have individuals who hate black people and want to kill black people. They got on a doctor's smock or a nurse's uniform. So now, I asked somebody, I said, let me give you a proposition, an open-ended question.
Yes.
Could there be a more ideal time for a racist doctor or a racist nurse who wants to harm or kill black folks? Could there be a more opportune time than the COVID-19 hysteria?
Oh,
when
yes.
You got black patients?
Oh, yes.
Because you know what? If they die because of something that the nurse did or the doctor did or equipment failure or what have you, what are they going to put on the death certificate? Are they going to put doctor error, nurse error, equipment failure, or are they going to put death by COVID-19?
I'm going to back you up on that with a name that was in the news a few years back. We had Kira in Charles Johnson. Kira, his wife, they already had a child, and then she had become pregnant again. And this was an issue that came into the media. You have Black people or Black women who are more apt to die after or during child delivery, whether it's a C-section or worse, because of lack of care. So if anyone would like to dispute that, and we have cases, and a recent one is that one, and she sticks with me because I'm very careful of where I go to the hospital for anything, and I hope that I never ever need surgery, because I remember my own first pregnancy. I had most likely a condition, calling the nurses over and over again. This is my first pregnancy. I had morning sickness so bad. I said, this just could not be normal. It didn't feel normal to me. I could not eat. I could not drink. I had to do little sips of water. So really, I should have most likely been hospitalized to make sure my vitals and my levels were staying up. Not one message was given to my doctor. She looked at me like when I finally had my next doctor's appointment, which was months later. I mean, months later. Anything could have happened in between that time. I could have actually maybe my baby had expired. So I say Kira because Kira bled to death after a C-section. She had a C-section and no one came to check on her. She was saying she was in pain. There was something wrong. Husband tried to get people to come back to that room. Of course, it was a white nurse and a white doctor. And she was not, as they said to him blatantly, because there were other people that they were more concerned about who did not look like Kira and him. And they said, your wife is not a priority. And that is a realization. I have that realization as a Black woman going into the hospital. Luckily, I go to one hospital, one place, and I have been a priority. But I know, depending on where I'm going, depending on what state, depending on what's going on, depending on who I'm in front of, I am not a priority. I could be having a heart attack, and I'm not a priority. So if anyone wants to dispute that, you need to look up some info before you say something on my feed. Because I have too many names and too many cases.
Something else that's strange. If you get 10 scientists in the room, you're lucky to get 3 of them to agree. But all of a sudden, it's like you have this, everybody is in lockstep in the medical field in terms of what needs to be done. And you don't hear any opposing viewpoints concerning what we could do. Have you noticed that? I mean, they tried out Anthony Fauci, and he's telling everybody, this is what you should do. You should stay in. You should wear your mask. But see, lo and behold, I'm not a doctor, but I listen to doctors, and I study what other doctors have to say, not just Fauci. There are other doctors out there whose resumes and whose expertise and whose history in the field goes back even further than Fauci's. And you know what some of them are saying? You need sunlight. That the virus dissipates or weakens in sunlight. If you look at what happened in the what happened in the Spanish flu epidemic, which was the worst epidemic in the last 200 years.
Okay.
Killed 50 million people worldwide. Do you know what the doctors began to do? This was in 1918, from 1918 to about 1920. They said, they begin to have the patients who are infected with the Spanish flu virus. They would let them recover outside in the sunshine. And they noticed that they began to recover faster. You even have some doctors who are saying that you shouldn't wear masks. Some people shouldn't wear masks. Not everybody, but some people shouldn't wear masks.
To develop the antibodies. Yes.
Because you keep breathing it in. It has nowhere to go. I mean, and you have why is it that no talk is being done by these the doctors that you see in the media about alternative measures? It's
some of them have been disputed, but then some of them, I think they just don't want people. And that's another thing you bring up, because when you look at ages and maybe beliefs, which factor into some of these things, with a lot of numbers maybe being higher, because outside of it, so you have a lot of people who will do a home remedy first to see if that works, especially if they think they just got a cold. No, I'm
talking, Crystal, I'm not talking about laymen. I'm talking about these are doctors.
Oh, the doctors.
Don't hear from. I mean, you have to go alternative media to hear them. They're not gonna let the on mainstream media source. These are doctors. Dr. Rashad Buttar is one. Dr. Judy Nikovich is another. These people are renowned in their fields.
Okay.
And there are many others. And see, what they'll do is they'll say, these people are quacks. Mm-hmm. They'll dismiss them, right? Well, if they're quacks, prove it to me. It's just like if I say drinking water. If you got joint pains and if you drink more water, you could be if you suffer from dehydration, then this may cause you to have joint pains or headaches because you're dehydrated. These are symptoms of dehydration. Mm-hmm. So drink some water. So if you drink the water and then your headache goes away and your pains go away, right?
Exactly.
Then evidence that it could be that you needed some water. But then you have people that say, no, we don't want the person to drink water because we can't charge them for the water. We want them to take a pill. So they'll come after the doctor and say, well, all you got to do is drink some water. They'll call that doctor a quack. Mm-hmm. Okay, if he's a quack, then disprove what he said. Show that what he says is inaccurate scientifically. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Don't just dismiss it. But this is what's going on. You have, but I don't want to get off of that too much. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong, Crystal listeners. I'm not saying that any of them are 100% right. I'm just saying it's strange that all you're hearing from is certain doctors. Yes. And no one else is being heard.
Now I want to go to the next one because we're going to end shortly. But you are correct about that because there was a man, and I try to stay stationary and maybe not move the phone around because sometimes you cut out, but you come right back. But a man on a ship, one of the things he was doing to help combat is he was drinking lots of Gatorade. He became infected with it. He had to separate from his wife. He just keep his spirits up. He spoke to his wife every day. That helped. And then also he did talk about drinking lots of fluids and moving around. And we had doctors say, you got to, if anything does happen and it gets to the point where it's so bad, you do have to help that person move around, hit that back, and hopefully they can stay hydrated. But I want to go on to this one because you brought this up a little bit, and it's and we're going to end in the next few minutes. So let's talk about the community. And this was something that was being put out there. I didn't like it because they kept saying how the numbers were higher in the Black community. Then you had China who was trying to kick out the Africans all of a sudden, that they had a reason. They really didn't want them there in the first place. And then this just created a reason. Sometimes things just happen and then the reason, but the underlying issues were already there. So I didn't like that. And they were just, to me, maybe they were trying to make it more aware. But like you said, you have some people who, they don't have a choice but to leave the house. Maybe their jobs, you have a lot more minority people who work some of these jobs that are considered essential workers. So there's several factors of why. But what you saw on Facebook was, oh, we are our own worst enemies. Why can't they just stay home? And I saw that even in the Black community. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. See, now it's becoming a what? A Black issue. And this isn't a Black issue. This is a people issue because you got the white people out there doing the same things. I see them too. I know where I live. But only one was being highlighted because the numbers were higher, not realizing job, income, and certain things play a factor in, like you say, being in an urban community like New York, like Detroit, like Los Angeles. You have more air pollution, so you have a lower immune system as well. Not everybody has an air purifier in the house. Now, how much do you think of putting that out there? And that may cause some issues. What happened to Ahmaud Arbery? Oh, he's in our neighborhood. He must be here to steal. It had to be more than just COVID-19 at that point. So just this, did you see that, or did you even get the feeling, or maybe they're trying to make this a Black issue and the fear that could cause out there in the community?
Yes, definitely. And there's historical precedent for it. There's historical precedent for it, especially during the pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic that I mentioned in the early 20th century. The news media, the racist news media, and we still have a racist news media. Let's make no mistake about that. It's just more sophisticated now. But anyway, the racist news media were beginning to connect the influenza virus of the early 20s, 1918, 19 to 1920, the Spanish flu virus, to black folks. It says it's the blacks that's carrying it. They're dirty. They live in those ghettos, those slums. They're spreading the disease. And then so when that got out, right now you got some white folks that say, hey, well, what's the solution? Well, we need to kill them. We need to kill those blacks because they're spreading the disease, which was not true. And so now, you had that same element, or we could not afford the luxury of ignoring that element in the current pandemic. Just like you mentioned, Christian, you said, well, what is all this about? It's the blacks. Blacks seem to have it more than anybody else. But they were not, well, somebody said it's because of our health, our compromised health. That could be a fact.
Exactly.
But, you're walking on a thin line now. You're walking on a thin line. And, I might sound like a conspiracy theorist, but when you put that out there that blacks are dying more, they're more susceptible to it. This also opens the door for racists to say, okay, they come in here and we kill them. We just said it was COVID-19. Who's going to question it? They've already put out there that blacks are more susceptible to it, right? We'll just take them out. We say, well, they're not really, you don't really have medical examiners looking at these bodies. They're not doing any autopsies. The doctor who signs the death certificate has the permission from the Center of Disease Control, the CDC, to just write down into the person. Even if you don't know, you can just, if you think it's COVID-19, you have the permission of the CDC to write cause of death of COVID-19. So, then you got the media saying blacks seem to be getting more than anybody. Blacks are dying more than anybody from COVID-19. Well, that's really opening up the door. And so I said, what? Be careful. Especially, we can't forget, Crystal. I don't know if they've lifted this yet, but your loved ones could not go and see you in these hospitals.
Oh, yes. Oh, no, they said that. Oh, yeah. People having distance funerals. The woman who's, she was by herself when it was her husband and her son that passed. And she was allowed, of course, there and with her mask on. But I'm not sure if it was the funeral home lady. Like she couldn't get a hug. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And she said that was hard.
So,
she definitely seemed like a strong woman, but still, at times, you need a hug.
Well, even before COVID-19, my wife had an issue. She went to the hospital, and they wanted to examine her, and they said, okay, now they know this. This is my wife. Listen. Okay, Mr. Shelton, you want to step outside the room? I said, what? No, I'm not stepping outside no room. Well, no.
You pretty much seeing your wife.
I step outside the room. They did it with my son too when he was young. He's 20 now. But when he was about like 6, he was having him examined for something. Okay, they told me and my wife, his mother and his father, we need y'all to step outside the room.
Oh no.
Well, what? What are you gonna do? What do you that you don't want us to see? So no, we're not going anywhere. Now, once we refused to go, Crystal and listeners, they stood down. You feel me?
Okay. Yes.
But I think they was like trying to take our temperature, so to speak, trying to see if we was gonna go for it. You know what I'm saying? And mind you, the COVID-19, there's some big elements of that in COVID-19 because a lot of this stuff I think is that how far can we go with this? I'm talking about government entities. How much are we going to get when we tell them, no, stay in your house. No, you can't go see anybody. No, you can't go to the hospital to see your loved one. No, you can't bury your people. No, you can't do this and you can't do that. You know what I'm saying? So the numbers. Somebody said, well, people are dying. People have always died. When did people stop dying, Christian?
That hasn't happened. I don't know. Funeral homes are doing quite well, unfortunately.
Yes, but How do we know it's COVID-19? Because they said it. Because they say it's COVID-19, right?
That's what we have to go on.
That's what we have to go on. I could go in the hospital and they could smother me to death and put on the death certificate COVID-19 killed me. Because what? My wife and my loved ones can't even go in there and check on me. And then they're not doing any proper autopsies. Or most of the time, they're not even doing a medical examination.
Mm.
So I'm just saying, we cannot afford with our history, Crystal. We're the last people. We're the last group of people in the United States of America that can afford the luxury of just taking somebody's word for something. You feel what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Sweat our own pearl.
And they don't see where that distrust comes from, but you have to know the history. You know the history, you see what's out there, and you're aware, and you know about the experimentations, and you know about all of that. And there's a little distrust. Like this one man had a complete meltdown. He had filmed it and it made it onto the news or onto at least the Facebook feed. And he was like, "You're not putting a needle in my arm. I don't care if you say it's COVID-19. I want to leave." But they couldn't because it's COVID-19. I was like, "We can't let you just walk out of here." Because they're under orders. So there was stress on both sides. And I understand what he was saying. Like, I don't want to take this medicine. But I also saw where the doctors was coming from. We have people who are dying. We got our orders because they just doing what? Following orders at the end of the day. Crystal, the man was refusing treatment. And I don't think the doctors really understood where he was coming from, being an African-American male, not wanting them to poke him without him having a little bit more information. I think he just wanted maybe a second opinion. Because this disease is fearful. This is new medicine. This is new territory. And anything new, and then it's like, you're going to put it in me first? I understand people's fear on that.
There's evidence to suggest that, and from reputable sources, that these vaccines are causing diseases.
Some people do feel that, yes, I've heard that. You see those. Mm-hmm.
Check this out. I don't know if we got enough time, but briefly.
Yep, and there's just one more thing I want you to do. But so if you want to go ahead, you can go ahead and do that briefly.
Okay. In the 1980s, the pharmaceutical companies, the big pharma companies, they went to the United States government and they said, "Hey, we're going to stop making vaccines." The government said, "Why?" They said, "Because for every dollar we make on vaccines, we're losing $4 or $5 because we're getting sued. Because the vaccines are hurting people, right? They're injuring people. So it's not worth our while. In fact, it's hurting us to make vaccines." So the government said, U.S. government said, "Wait a minute. We don't want you guys to stop making vaccines. We need you to make vaccines. Tell you what, we'll pass a law that says that the pharmaceutical companies cannot be sued. I don't care what their vaccine does to somebody. It could kill somebody. It could cripple somebody. It could blind somebody. No one can sue the pharmaceutical companies for vaccine." The government said, "What we'll do, we'll take upon that burden. We'll decide whether or not a case is valid." So the pharmaceutical companies say, "Sweet, this is a sweet deal." So check out what happens. If the vaccine injures someone or poisons someone or causes a disease in someone, right, that they didn't have previously before they took the vaccine, guess what the pharmaceutical companies do? They come out with the pharmaceutical medicine to treat the disease that the vaccine caused in the first place.
So it's like a circle.
I mean, that's a win-win.
It really is. Wow.
And so, I mean, yeah, go ahead. What's the question you want to ask now?
Yeah, so so to you, because for me, they keep saying the new normal, or when we get back to normal, but the masks are gonna really have to stay in place. Schools may look a little different. Movie theaters may look different. They're talking about how they're gonna have to work with cutting those numbers down with people going into the theater so it can operate. We see that the movie companies are releasing things on demand. Universal's like, "Hey, you released that movie. That was supposed to be it was a money maker. That movie Trolls was a big money maker." And to them, that was like, what? Right now we're hurting a little bit we were expecting that to get us out, and you release it prior. Mind you, a lot of people haven't seen it. So it's things like that. And they keep talking about the normal. So normal may not be normal because they were like, look, we're not dealing with you all anymore. You may not show anything in this theater. That may or may not hurt that company. It may hurt them a little bit more. So we see how things, and it's almost like people are like, oh, once we're able to go back outside, it's just gonna be like that. And I don't think so. And I think there's other people who may see it a little differently too, especially if you have a special needs child like I do. So for you, what is the new normal, and then what does getting back to normal mean to you?
First of all, normal has never been good for Black folk in America. Normal, you know what normal means for us, right?
Oh yeah.
Normally,
yeah.
But let me say this to really directly address your question. This is what certain high-level people who may and who do have devious, underhanded agendas afoot.
Mm-hmm.
Want certain things to happen. They want to be able to control people. They want to be able to tell people, no, you can't all come in the government building at once. We know you want to protest. We know you don't like what we're doing with your money, your tax dollars, or what have you. We know you don't like the law that's been passed or the ordinance that's been put through. You got to stay 6 feet apart, and we can only take 3 of you at a time. Yeah, this is the normal they want because it benefits them. But and there's other examples I can give you too. But the bottom line is this: as more experts, alternate experts that you're not hearing now that much, whether it's from the medical profession and other places, scientists, people that know people like Fauci, and they're getting to come out and speak on who he really is. People that know people like Bill Gates and his foundations. Bill Gates has made more money since his charitable foundation. He's doubled his money since he's had the foundation.
Yeah.
Doubled his money. How can you be giving away money but you're doubling your money?
He is. I can't even tell you that because, first of all, it's all going to go. Like, as long as him and his wife are alive, they have the money. Their kids are going to get like a very, very, very small portion, and then the rest is to go to all of their charity, whatever they're doing. All of it's to go to charity. So I have no idea, but yeah, that man just keeps making money. It doesn't matter. But he's like Midas right now. When he touches, it turns to gold.
He's giving the money to entities that he has interest in, a stocking or interest in. It makes his money. But anyway, to answer your question, Crystal, these are some of the things that they want to happen, and they're putting it in people's minds through the media. But the people are not as sheepish as they think they are. And people are starting to wake up to this thing, although it's bad, although there's a virus out here, it does not require the overreach and the draconian measures that they're putting in place, and they want to continue to put in place.
Okay.
One of the things they're doing is because they want to prep people to get ready for vaccines. They've already, they're speeding the vaccines through. They're testing them up, Crystal. They're testing these vaccines that they rush through on human beings. They call them volunteers.
Yeah.
And they haven't even done studies yet. You always have to do animal studies before you begin to test, to put vaccines that have not been tested properly and vetted properly into human subjects. Okay. They're jumping right to humans without testing on animals first. So they really are getting ready. They really want to sell these vaccines, and that's why you always see Bill Gates' face, and you see Anthony Fauci's face. Anthony Fauci has a patent on the Corona-19 virus, and he has a patent. Him and Bill Gates, they work together, two peas in a pod, on these vaccines.
Wow!
And they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, Gates has in the vaccine. That's why he said out of his own mouth, I'm talking about Bill Gates. He said out of his own mouth, we're not going to be safe. The world won't be safe until everybody on earth has been vaccinated. Take the vaccine. This is what Bill Gates is saying. What medical school did he go to?
No, as far as I know, he does computers, as far as I know. But I guess he paid some people. You know, if you got money, you pay some people. But thank you, Mr. Shelton, for bringing this up. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for all of your commenting and all the information that you have provided. And hopefully it has done something for someone. Hopefully someone will pick up that book, Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington. I'm going to listen to my audio soon.
Let me say this before I close. Thank you, Christopher. Don't believe anything I say and don't believe anything anybody else says. Always encourage people, go check it out for yourself.
Yes, you have to be a searcher and a seeker. And that's one thing that I do love about having met, because I had actually met another young man before Malik, who actually introduced me to their organization. And they are a wealth of information. And it's not just them telling you, they'll show you the actual government documents. He sends me tons of information. It's like, I can't even go through all of it. But you guys are a wealth of information. So for anyone who does have those questions about bonds, if you have questions about something, tax dollars, they are definitely to ask. Because you all made me kind of, because when I met Ivan, I thought it was so funny because he was saying, well, we got this bond going on. They didn't know that what built the new Chrysler plant was bond money. And I was like, what do you mean there was no vote? Because right now we're voting on a bond issue for our school district. So I didn't understand how money was used without there being a vote, because we had to, because ours was expiring. So we had to vote to keep it in place for the extra, tax money that was going. It didn't change it. It was just to keep it going. So, but you said like these bonds have been going and going and going, and the money's been getting spent. However, and so far there hasn't really been a vote. So the work that you guys are doing is just awesome. And I hope you're able to continue once this is all over, because I thought about you all. I was like, man, these young men, these men aren't in the streets like they were, really going into the neighborhoods, checking and the things that you were doing because of COVID-19, because of the pandemic.
We're using the time at home to really, get the goods on them so we can put more nails in the coffin and they open it back up.
I can't wait. Can't wait. I love the information that you guys send. Like I said, it even made me look at our bond a little closer. I was like, I said, oh, okay, cool. And then I was like, well, let me go onto the website and look. I said, let me make sure I know what I'm voting on.
Crystal, you got to get Ramon Jackson on and Brother Ivo.
Okay.
You got to get them on.
I will.
I'm going to straighten. So maybe if you decide to invite me back, I can actually have the video of it. Of me.
Yeah, you have to send it. I can always just share it on my screen. Yes, that's why I go through Zoom. I said, I need to get you this way so we can have our interview and have it live. So I'm going to let you go so you can enjoy your day with your wife. I thank you for coming on again. So, things may always look, one way, and especially when it's reported a certain way, and especially when it hits social media a certain way, but those underlying reasons of why. So things aren't always so black and white. And again, it's a people issue. People are dying. If you're going to pass out masks to one, pass out masks to the other. And that's one thing I do congratulate us on. They put masks on a bus because those people still had to go to work. You have to look at every perspective. I meet a lot of Black nurses. I meet a lot of Black people who work in Kroger's and also these stores, and they're in more of a high risk. You have a lot of minorities and ethnic people who I stop, but they drive Lyft and Uber, and they're putting themselves at risk so that people can continue. So it's not just like Black people are dying. This is a people issue. And sometimes people put themselves at risk to help others. So you got to look at everything. You got to look at the bigger picture, because that's what I did. So thank you, Mr. Shelton, for providing an even bigger picture for some of us. I would love to have you guys back on. I'd love to have Ramon on. We can get with that later. Is there anything else you want to say before you go?
No, just that when you listen to experts, we should never allow ourselves to be overwhelmed just because of a title, Dr. So-and-so, or, whatever.
Exactly.
Because if you get 10 of them in a room, you'd be lucky if you get 2 or 3 of them to agree.
They've never agreed. You see, right now, there's a whole big thing. You got one people over here doing something. Why they locked down? They need to get antibodies and be out. Let the old stay in and let the young roam, as some of them have said. So yeah, they disagree right now.
And if they are all agreeing, something's wrong.
Exactly. I would question that if you said a room full of doctors and lawyers and they weren't arguing and debating, I wouldn't trust that either. I would not. Thank you, Mr. Shelton. You have a blessed day. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. Look up Mr. Shelton. Look up the organization that he talked about, especially if you are in the city of Detroit and you are a person who wants to get involved. You know who your leaders are. Peace, love, and many blessings.